Matt DiBenedetto could be headed to Kaulig Racing in 2024. IROC is officially back and RFK is looking to expand in the near future. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to first go ahead and take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed. On Friday, it was first revealed Ryan Ellis's 2024 Heartbeat Hot Sauce scheme that we're going to see at Daytona. This paint scheme looks really good in my opinion. Alpha Prime Racing does an amazing job overall, and I think this paint scheme looks excellent and really good in my honest opinion. The only other paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Weatherman's 2024 Drive Smart scheme that we're going to see throughout 2024, including at the Daytona Xfinity Series opener. This scheme also looks really solid in my opinion. I'm glad to see Kyle Weatherman's in this car. It looks really good. Drive Smart has a really big partnership with Kyle Weatherman over the course of the last 2 years. Really glad to see that Kyle Weatherman will have this paint scheme for 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as unfortunately we're taking this episode to a sour note, as sadly it was reported a few days ago that Tim Steele unfortunately passed away. For those who did not know who Tim Steele was a legend of the ARCA series who won like 40 or 41 ARCA races, if I'm not mistaken, and also was a champion of the ARCA series, and also is one of the biggest what-if stories. My prayers and condolences do go out to the family of Tim Steele, and I'm thinking about the Steele family currently at the moment. So I'm wishing the best, and really sad news, unfortunately, here in the industry. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bennett. As it was announced earlier today that Bennett has extended partnership with Richard Childress Racing. They are going to be sponsoring Austin Hill for majority races in 2024 and also in 2025 as well. Bennett joined RCR back in 2022 when Austin Hill joined the RCR in the 2022 season. So really good to see that Bennett will continue that partnership, and glad to see that there's a fully committed. I think they're going to be a majority sponsor, like I mentioned, for 2024. Glad to see they're going to continue that in the 2024 season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the number 43 car. As was reported by Joseph Sprigley over the weekend that according to him, when Eric Jones takes the green flag at the 2024 Daytona 500, it will be the 12th manufacturer for the number. That is absolutely crazy. Obviously, we know that Legacy Motor Club is switching to Toyota in 2024. We'll talk about that team here in just a little bit near the end of the episode. But it's really crazy and cool to see that the 43 car has had 12 different manufacturers with different drivers. It's been with, I think, Buick, if I'm not mistaken, Dodge, Chrysler, Chevy, Ford, and now Toyota is among the manufacturers that are there. So that's really awesome and really crazy news to see. The 43 car has had 12 manufacturers already. Pretty awesome and crazy stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about DraftKings and Bet MGM. As it was announced on Friday that DraftKings is partnering with NASCAR and Bet MGM will be partnering with Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is due to the new North Carolina betting laws that are going to be coming into play, where it's going to be required that they have to be registered. So it's really cool to see that DraftKings, which has been growing their presence in NASCAR, and Bet MGM, who's also been growing its presence in NASCAR, is going to be there a lot more. Pretty awesome, and glad to see that Bet MGM and DraftKings are expanding their partnership. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Atlanta Truck Race. As it was reported by Bob Pockrass on Friday that the Atlanta Truck Race will be shortened from 135 laps to 130 laps. Why are they shortening it? Well, remember last year in 2023, the race is called the Freight Auctions 208, which, of course, 135 laps correlates about 208 miles. For the course of the race, they're shortening back down to 200 miles, so that's why it's 130 laps, because of it being a super speedway. Not a major shock and surprise, but it's very noteworthy because the race will be a little shorter. It's not a surprise to see that they're going to be shortening races, but I think it's really good that they've made this update, and of course, for the Truck Series, I think it's better considering the fact that the Truck Series has kind of been a mess over the course of the last few years. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Williams. As it was announced today that Williams has signed an extension with Mercedes to use their power unit system through 2030. Williams started their partnership with the team all the way back in 2014, and they had a contract through this year, 2024, but now that contract is going to get expanded a lot longer to 2030. Williams has shown a lot of improvement, and we already know the Mercedes has gotten a lot better in the last year or two, but it's really good to see that Williams is going to be committed long-term and looking to perform a lot better in the 2024 season. They showed a lot of improvement with Alex Albon. Hopefully Logan Sargent can step up to the plate. It's really good to see, though, that Williams has signed that extension, and they'll be working with them once again in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ros Chastain. As it was announced earlier this evening that Ros Chastain will be joining Rackler Racing in the Speed event at Cordell Speedway. Obviously, Rackler Racing is going to be doing a lot of late model racing. They're kind of known for their late model scene. And now Ros Chastain is going to have an opportunity to get a little more experience in Rackler Racing at the Cordell Speedway. Hopefully, it will help him out a lot more on short tracks. And it's really cool to see that you do have Ros Chastain going out there and doing different events. Really exciting and awesome to see. They'll be joining Rackler Racing in 2024, at least for that event. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ward Burton. As it was announced on Friday, shockingly, that Ward Burton is going to be returning to racing. He is going to be racing in the Orange Crush 200 at Orange County Speedway, I believe in either April or May of this year. And Jed Burton, of course, is the son of Ward Burton, will be joining as well in that race. The last time Ward Burton raced was in 2012 when he ran some select truck series races in the number 27 truck, the same organization that Jed Burton drove for, or of course, I think that was Turner Scott Motorsports, if I'm not mistaken, in the truck series. And now it's really cool to see that Ward Burton is getting back into racing. It's been a very, very long time, and I think it's just amazing, incredible to see that he is officially coming back. I'm really excited about it. I think he's going to do a really solid and a really, really good job. Hopefully Ward Burton can compete. And like I said, I know it's been a very long time, but it's amazing and great to see that Ward Burton is officially coming back to racing. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tim Duggar. As it was announced on Friday that Tim Duggar will perform pre-race concerts at 10 Speedway Motorsports Incorporated tracks. For those who don't know, Tim Duggar is a country music singer who's been known in the NASCAR world for a very, very long time. Here's the thing about Tim Duggar. I love that he loves the sport. I love how passionate he is, and it's cool that he's doing a tour. But Tim Duggar is not known by many people outside of the NASCAR industry. If I asked a normal day person who Tim Duggar was, no one would know who he is. That's no disrespect to Tim, but come on, man, SMI. Legitimately, you could have gotten someone like a Dirk Bentley again. You could have gotten Jelly Roll to do the concerts because you're not bringing tickets in. Some of those racetracks having a hard time selling tickets, and you get Tim Duggar, who has like 25,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, as your guy doing your pre-race concerts. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me, and it's questionable at best with this decision. Again, it's SMI, so they sometimes make not the best decisions in the role, just like what they did at Texas Motor Speedway when they reconfigured the track 7 years ago. But anyways, I'm not a big fan of this move in my opinion, but it's not a surprise to see they're doing this because SMI has tended to make some of not the most greatest decisions in the world over time. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Car Store. As it was announced on Friday that the Car Store has announced a new Pro Late Model West Series that's going to be starting in 2024. The season's going to kick off at Kern Speedway, which is Kevin Harvick Raceway, on March 2nd, followed by Irwindale on April 13th, and then back at Irwindale on May 17th. Then they'll go to Stockton 99 on May 25th, and then head to Las Vegas Motor Speedway Bull Ring on the 15th of June, followed by going back to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway Bull Ring on July the 3rd. After that, to go back to Stockton on July 20th, day before my mother's birthday. Then we'll head to Irwindale on August 31st, then All-American Raceway on October 5th, and then we'll head back to Kern on November 16th for the final race of the Cars Late Model Tour. Really exciting stuff. The Cars Late Model Tour obviously has made a lot of investments in the last year or so. Obviously, Kevin Harvick, Dale Jr., Justin Marks, and Jeff Burton have invested into this series, and I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for drivers to find a way to develop their craft and get better out on the racetrack. I think it's really exciting that we're seeing this expansion in motorsports currently at the moment where the Cars Late Model Tour is growing. The more racing you can have, the better. I know they're having some talk of maybe having a West Coast series, but in general, it's pretty cool to see this, and maybe they'll have an East Coast series in the future, though they are going to have a lot of racing on the East in 2024. So in general, I think this is really, really exciting and great to see. The Cars Tour is, of course, going to be expanding to the West. Really awesome and exciting stuff, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeff Gordon. Now, there's a video that came out, I believe, from Hendrick Motorsports' Twitter page that Jeff Gordon spoke on how he got the opportunity to work with Hendrick Motorsports. He spoke on 1992. Of course, Jeff Gordon at the time was driving the #1 Baby Ruth Ford for Bill Davis Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He explains that Rick Hendrick actually was at the Xfinity Series race at the time watching, and he was actually paying attention to Jeff Gordon. And he said, "Who is this kid?" And they all said hotshot Jeff Gordon from the Thursday Night Thunder that took place back in the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s as well. And Rick watched him smoke the tires, and then basically what happened was that Rick saw him go on and win, and then he basically said we should hire this kid. And I believe that Jeff Gordon's roommate at the time, I can't remember the name exactly, but spoke to Rick and said, "You know what? This kid is not going to be under contract with Ford. He's actually not under contract with Ford, so we should go after him." And then the rest is history. You look what Jeff Gordon accomplished as a driver at Hendrick Motorsports, 93 career wins, 4 championships, one of the best drivers in the history of the sport, and one of the most popular drivers in the sport. We talk about Jeff Gordon all the time, one of the greatest ever to race, and I think it's just absolutely amazing and great to see what Jeff Gordon has been able to accomplish in the sport, and it's really cool to see him talk about how he got the opportunity to Hendrick, because I think it's a really interesting and compelling story overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Akinori Ogata. As Akinori Ogata, it was actually posted from Joseph Strigley, but Akinori Ogata put on his Facebook, it says he is looking for sponsors for 2024. He is looking to run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, quite a few races, and maybe, just maybe, might make his NASCAR Cup Series debut if he can find the sponsorship and funding. For those who don't know, Akinori Ogata has won quite a few races at Hickory Motor Speedway at a much older age, and he's made some select truck series starts and a couple Xfinity Series starts at MGM Motorsports over the course of the last few years. I don't think Akinori Ogata is an amazing driver overall, but if he can find sponsorship and funding, it would be really cool and awesome to see him have a chance and opportunity to race in NASCAR and maybe make his Cup Series debut. Would it be successful? Probably not. I don't think he would do absolutely amazing, but it would be very cool to see him have the chance and opportunity to race in the Cup Series at least once. It would be pretty awesome, and we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, hopefully he can find a sponsorship funding so he can go out and go ahead and race in NASCAR once again in 2024, because he does need sponsorship funding to have that opportunity and shot. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Norm Benning. Now, if you've been paying attention over the course of the last few weeks, you've seen a situation going on with Norm Benning. So a few weeks ago, Brock Beard put out on Twitter that Norm Benning is looking for sponsorship and funding. And he only has about 7 or 8 days left to be able to get that funding, because according to what Norm Benning has told a lot of people, apparently it's an amazing and a really good opportunity for Norm Benning for the Daytona race. And this may be one of the last chance opportunities that we can see Norm Benning compete in NASCAR, because Norm Benning is a much older driver. I have a little bit of theory on where I think he might be going. My theory is right now is that Norm Benning may or may not be headed to an organization like Tricon. I know the one truck is kind of available, though I think that truck might be run by John Hunter. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe a team like On Point Motorsports is going to come back. I don't know at this particular point, but I really hope they can find the funding and sponsorship for Norm Benning, because Norm has been around for a very, very long time. And it'd be really cool to see him have a chance and opportunity to drive an amazing equipment, because Norm Benning has really never had the opportunity to race in really awesome equipment. So I really hope they can find the sponsorship and funding for him so that he can race. We'll see what happens down the road, and we'll see if Norm Benning gets that chance and opportunity to potentially race. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about J.R. Hilderbrand. As it was reported by Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com that J.R. Hilderbrand is working on an Indy 500 return after not racing in 2023. That ended a 12-year run that he had from 2011 up until 2022, where he drove for organizations like Panther Racing and also drove for organizations, of course, like Dreyer Reinbold Racing, which he drove for them for the last 5 or 6 years. But obviously that kind of fell through this year when Stephen Wilson, I think it was Stephen Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, drove for the Cusack Motorsports number 24 car. Obviously we had issues there. And obviously, J.R. Hilderbrand wants to come back. Now, where do I think Jared Hilderbrand could end up going? There is an AJ Foyt racing car that is potentially going to be open for 2024 that hasn't been confirmed at this point, but there's been a lot of chatter that maybe we could see him go to AJ Foyt Racing perhaps. That could definitely be an option for sure, though Chevy is kind of limiting how many engines they're going to be giving, same with Honda. So the rides are limited. Maybe Dry Ryan Bull Race again could be an option, but that hasn't been confirmed at this point what they're doing at this particular moment. There's been rumors maybe Connor Daly could go there, but that has also not been confirmed at this moment from the team and the organization. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that and where we see Jared Hilderbrand go, but I really hope he gets the opportunity to run the Indy 500 because I want to see him finally win the Indy 500. He came close to winning as a rookie. He's had a decent career in IndyCar, and hopefully Jared Hilderbrand will once again get the chance and opportunity to run in the Indy 500 once again, but like most drivers, he's going to need sponsorship funding to be able to do that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced earlier today that Brad Perez will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing part-time in 2024. He will also be doing simulator work for the organization and will be the relief driver for the team, the number 45 team in 2024, and also will make his first start at Circuit of the Americas, which will be the first road course race for the Xfinity Series in 2024. Brad Perez, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated drivers in this sport. He's kind of known as a road course racer, has raced in the Mazda MX-5 Cup Series, had some success in that, and also, of course, has been working in IMSA, has been doing a lot of spotting for teams like Alpha Prime Racing, and has been a reserve driver for multiple teams in the industry. I'm really glad to see him getting another opportunity, and I think he will do a solid job with Alpha Prime. Obviously, the 45 car will not run the full entire season, in my understanding, but they will run a part-time schedule in 2024. But I think it is really cool to see that Brad is back in this series. I really hope he can do a good job. Again, I don't know how many races exactly because they didn't set how many races exactly he is going to run, but I'm glad to see Brad Perez has been working his ass off to get these opportunities. He's getting, once again, a chance and opportunity to race with this team. I'm excited about it. Hopefully he can make the best of it and can contend for victories with this ride in 2024. I know it's not probably likely going to happen in 2024, but glad to see he's getting the opportunity and shot to drive once again for this team in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing and Trackhouse Racing. So it was announced earlier this evening that there's going to be an interesting crew chief swap that is going to be happening. So Trent Owens, no shocker and surprise, is back crew chiefing the number 31 car for Daniel Hemrick. Trent Owens has actually been crew chiefing that number 31 car for the last couple of years with Justin Haley. Here's where the interesting thing goes. Travis Mack, who's been the crew chief for Daniel Suarez for the last couple of years, he will be the crew chief for the 16 car. We'll talk about that car here later down the road, which of course will also be a rotation car. Travis Mack moves away from Trackhouse and will be the crew chief for the 16 car in 2024. Meanwhile, Matt Swiderski, who's been the crew chief of the number 16 Cup car for the last year or so, he will be the crew chief for Daniel Suarez in 2024. This confirms a couple things. One, they are trying to make Daniel Suarez a better driver because Daniel Suarez is on a hot seat here in 2024. But number two, this kind of confirms what a lot of people have been saying, that Trackhouse and Kaulig Racing seem to have an alliance. I think this confirms a lot of those rumors. Obviously, Daniel Suarez needed some new scenery, needed some new changes going into 2024 because Daniel Suarez had kind of struggled in the 2023 season. Hopefully, this crew chief change can go ahead and help him in the 2024 season, but we're just going to have to wait and see how things kind of play out for him in 2024 because this, like I said, is a big year for Daniel Suarez because you've got SVG is going to be running the full season with Kaulig Racing, but he's likely making select starts, probably in that 16 car, but he also could drive a Trackhouse car in Cup. That never was officially confirmed what number exactly he's going to be driving in the Cup Series, but we know he's going to be full-time with Kaulig. And then you have Zane Smith is going to Spire Motorsports, but we know that Justin Marks stated publicly at the press conference that he's wanting to have Zane Smith as a full-time driver for Trackhouse next year in 2025. Nonetheless, it's a big year for Daniel Suarez step up. Maybe this crew chief change will help, and maybe both teams can work together very, very well and show a lot of improvement. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to how things end up going, but nonetheless, really good moves in my opinion, and glad to see that Kaulig and Trackhouse are making this move. Hopefully, it can help both teams show a lot of improvement and do a lot of great things for both in 2024. In general, it's really exciting and pretty cool stuff, in my honest opinion, that they are going ahead and making this move. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Spencer Boyd. As it was announced earlier today that Spencer Boyd has founded a new Truck Series team. The team is going to be called Freedom Racing Enterprises. Spencer Boyd is partnering up with Chris Miller, who is the owner of Freedom Racing Warranty, and they are going to be doing this new partnership in 2024. The number is going to be 76, which is kind of a homage to 1776 when a Declaration of Independence was created. Jeff Hammond, interestingly, is going to be the GM of this organization, and they have acquired the number 43 points from GMS Racing. Obviously, GMS Racing is no longer around, so a lot of the trucks are going to be going to Spencer Boyd in 2024. Obviously, the 43 points will make sure and guarantee that Spencer Boyd will at least make the first 2 or 3 races in 2024. With how much competition there's going to be in trucks already that has been confirmed, he's definitely going to need that. I think it's a really cool venture and a really amazing opportunity to see that Spencer Boyd is going to be owning a Truck Series team in the number 76, which he actually drove the number 76 in the Xfinity Series back in the day, I think in 2018 or 2019 for select number of races. And look, Spencer Boyd, we all know he won that Truck Series race in 2019 at Talladega, but let's be realistic with Young's Motorsports. He wasn't doing overall an amazing job with the team. He was off the pace a lot of weeks and didn't do an incredible job. But I think having Jeff Hammond there be GM and working with the organization, having GMS equipment, I think that definitely could help this team compete. Now, what are my realistic expectations for this organization in 2024? I have to be realistic with Spencer Boyd and this team. I think there might be some struggles coming this team's way. I would not be surprised if they fail to qualify at points throughout the year, and they're having a hard time finishing races, especially with electrical gremlins. But with Jeff Hammond being there, there's at least a little bit of hope that maybe, and some confidence, maybe we'll see them do a lot better than I'm hoping. Again, I want to see this team perform and do an amazing job. If they can do a really good job and compete for top 20s, that would be extremely impressive for the first year. But honestly, I don't know if that is going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But I love seeing a new team in the Truck Series, and it's more expansion for the Truck Series. Yes, we lost Kyle Busch Motorsports and GMS, but hey, we're getting new organizations like Freedom Racing Enterprises, and of course, we're getting a new team like Faction 46 coming into play, which bought a lot of GMS stuff. I think it's really interesting, really exciting, and pretty cool, in my honest opinion, that these moves are happening. I like it overall, and I'm very happy to see this when it comes to the moves of some new truck teams, and hopefully this team can perform and prove me wrong in 2024 and do an overall amazing job. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Auto Club Speedway. Now, Will Wester on Twitter put a little bit of tweets showing a little more destruction of Auto Club Speedway. This makes me very, very sad. Obviously, as many of you know what's been going on, Auto Club Speedway is being destroyed. Well, not every bit of it's being destroyed. There still has been some talks and conversations that they're still planning to do the half-mile short track that they've been talking about for a very, very long time, but those plans are still to be determined. It really, though, is a shame to see a track like Auto Club Speedway, who is really coming to his own over the last decade or so, which had 2 really strong races with the next-gen car in 2022 and 2023. The race that Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott got in a little bit of rivalry in 2022, and then, of course, in 2023, had a really great Xfinity Series race that happened, and an amazing Cup race where Kyle Busch got his first win with RCR and the final win at Auto Club, where Kyle Busch has won it 3 or 4 times in his Cup Series career. I really wish they didn't have to close down Auto Club Speedway. I wish the track was staying around, but I'm really not surprised. Obviously, the land, there's a lot of money in it. I think NASCAR got $555 million off the land, because the land in Auto Club in California especially is extremely valuable. That being said, though, it is very disappointing to see that this track is no longer a thing, or at least a full 2-mile track is no longer a thing. I'm going to be realistic with you guys. I really don't know what the future of Auto Club lies. We've been hearing updates on Auto Club for months and months and months, and nearly a year now up to this point, and we still have had no official confirmation on exactly what's going on with this track. So I really hope there's some sort of update coming in the future. I really hope we can come back to the track. The earliest I think we'll be racing is 2026 if we do have the short track. And hopefully by then, the short track package can be a lot better because the short track racing with the next-gen car has not been that great in my opinion. So I really hope things can get fixed in regards to that. I really do hope that we can make a return to that track in the near future, at least as a half mile, as a championship week, because it'd be really cool for it to be the championship week. But right now, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and there may not even be an Auto Club track anytime soon or even in the near future, which I find really disappointing and really sad overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen and Marco Andretti. As it was officially announced on Friday early in the morning that Shane Van Gisbergen and Marco Andretti are going to do the ARCA test at Daytona International Speedway this weekend. Shane Van Gisbergen will be driving for Pinnacle Racing Group, the same organization. They will be making his ARCA debut, which of course he is required to run that ARCA debut with that team in order to run the NASCAR Xfinity Series race later that day, because remember the ARCA race is on the same day as the NASCAR Xfinity Series race for the second or third year in a row. And Marco Andretti is going to be testing with Cook Racing Technologies, I believe in the number 42 car or either the number 63 car for that organization. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen, like I said, has to do that test in order to run the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. A lot of these people are going to be doing this test, which I believe I've heard that 60 drivers are likely going to that ARCA test. I know there's been some conflicting reports saying like 45 are going to be going, but I keep hearing bigger numbers like 63, 64 are going to be at that ARCA test. I know that Presley Soar is another name that has been mentioned. He's going to be running it, so congratulations to Presley on getting the opportunity to do that. But overall, I think with this test, it's going to be a good learning process and learning experience. And SVG will be able to have that practice, which most Cup Series drivers won't be even getting practice to begin with. We'll get that opportunity to learn these cars a lot more and learn the draft as well. So overall, I hope both of them can do a really good job. Obviously, Marc Andre, haven't heard anything exactly what he's doing. Some think he may make some starts in the Truck Series with Spire, considering the fact that he did make a couple select starts last year with Spire Motorsports. I know he wants to go full-time truck racing. He would like to make some more starts. So maybe with this experience, he can get that opportunity to do it once again. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that and what ends up happening with these two drivers. Obviously, SVG, I'm not sure if he's even making any truck starts at this point. It would be smart for him to even make maybe some truck starts with Nice Motorsports or Spire, perhaps. But again, nothing's been confirmed in regards to what's going on there with both drivers. Nonetheless, so both of them are going to be doing the test in ARCA, and it doesn't surprise or shock me or really anybody at this point that it's happening, as much as I don't really think it should be required that both of them have to do it. They have to do it, unfortunately, and it's disappointing that they're required to do it. But again, it's required from NASCAR, and it shouldn't surprise anybody that it is required at this particular point. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Stewart-Haas Racing. As Stewart-Haas Racing is going through a rebrand starting in 2024. The biggest rebrand is a new logo. Now, I've been paying attention over the last week or so. They have been posting a lot on social media. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. But let's take a look at this new logo real quick. I have to say that the logo looks okay. I don't think it absolutely looks amazing in my opinion, but I don't think it absolutely looks atrocious. I think there's good things about the logo. I think there's bad things about the logo, and it's kind of a little bit of throwback as well to what Haas CNC kind of used to look like with their logos when they were a team from 2003 to 2007 or 2008 before Tony Stewart, of course, bought into the organization. Look, when I think of this move, SHR wants to change up things. But let's be realistic with all stuff they're doing. They've basically been saying let history, we know our history speaks for itself, among other things, and showing all this stuff. And fair play to them for trying to be motivated, and I'll give them props on that. But SHR, let's be honest, the stuff that they're doing is just making them going to look like clowns if they don't perform. Let's be realistic here about Stewart-Haas Racing. Stewart-Haas Racing had their worst year as an organization. For the first time in the 15-year history of this organization, they unfortunately did not end up winning in the season. Kevin Harvick did come close to winning a few races, and Eric Almirola almost did win the second-to-last race at Martinsville. But in general, they struggled in the 2023 season. And they've lost Kevin Harvick and Eric Almirola, and they've lost Smithfield and, of course, Busch Beer, and they've also lost Hunt Brothers Pizza, and they've lost Tim Fedewa as a spotter. So I am really concerned about Stewart-Haas Racing, and yeah, I think that they could maybe fix things down the road. But again, I don't think the drivers are the problem with the team. I think all 4 drivers at that team, that of course being Ryan Preece, Chase Briscoe, Josh Berry, Noah Gragson, I think all 4 drivers definitely do have talent for sure. The problem you have with Stewart-Haas Racing currently at the moment is that this team is really behind the 8 ball and really behind the curve. And again, I'm just worried in general that they are going to struggle in the 2024 season because of this. I think at this team, I'll be honest, I don't think any of the cars make the playoffs this year. I think Josh Berry is the best shot because he's in a 4-car. Ronnie Childers is an amazing crew chief. I think Briscoe's got a chance at times. I think Preece may have a chance at the short tracks. Gragson, I don't think he's got a chance. I think his goal is just to stay out of the headlines and just perform the best he can. I think that they can fix stuff down the road. I know people talk about like them maybe switching manufacturers, maybe Junior coming in and buying up the organization. I don't know where those rumors started because I've not heard anything in regards to Dale Jr. or Kevin Harvick coming in and buying the team. I know people talk about that, but that's just rumor mill because people want to see SHR get better. Obviously, a lot of that is because Noah Gragson and Josh Berry are driving for the team, and they are former Junior Motorsports drivers. But just because they're former Junior Motorsports drivers does not mean that Dale Jr. is coming in to buy the team. Just to be clear, I know Dale Jr. is interested in having a Cup team, but right now that's not happening with Junior Motorsports. They're not doing that currently at the moment. So we'll see if SHR can really show some improvement in the 2024 season. But I really am concerned that they're not going to do an amazing job, and they are going to struggle sadly in 2024. I'm worried about that, and I won't be surprised or shocked if they don't win for the second year in a row and they fail to make the playoffs, because I think there's a good chance that they are not making the playoffs this year in 2024, and I won't be shocked and surprised if it happens, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Red Bull. Now, if you've been on social media over the course of the last couple of days, you have probably seen this teaser of Red Bull. So if you go to Justin Marks' Instagram story page, and unfortunately I believe that story is off, but this is what, of course, once again posted on this, I believe, on Shane Van Gisbergen's Instagram post. One of the things that is tagged is Red Bull. Now, why is Red Bull being potentially tagged perhaps? Now, this could potentially mean that Red Bull is making a return to NASCAR. Now, why could Red Bull be coming back? Well, Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen has had a sponsorship deal, a personal entitlement sponsorship deal with Red Bull for a very, very long time, and they've been on his helmet for many years. Remember, they actually were on his helmet when he won the Chicago Street Course race last year in 2023. So maybe they're going to come in and maybe we're going to see Red Bull sponsor him in 2024 as like a primary. The last time the Red Bull was in NASCAR was all the way back to 2011 when Brian Vickers drove the 83 and Casey Kane drove the number 4 car. But obviously they were an organization as well that did have solid success. Brian Vickers got a win with the team in 2009. And then, of course, you did have them get a win with Casey Kane at the penultimate race at Phoenix in 2011 before unfortunately selling their stuff off to the corrupt BK Racing. Look, I don't know how many races Red Bull will come back, if they even come back. I think it's cool that they are considering making a return to NASCAR. But my theory around Red Bull is they're basically going to come in and maybe just be an entitlement sponsor, be on his helmet. But it would be really cool to have SVG driving a Red Bull car. Because like I said, the last time Red Bull was in NASCAR was all the way back in 2011. So I really hope to come back as a sponsor and sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen. I know WeatherTech is going to be sponsoring SVG for a majority of his Xfinity Series races in 2024, though I don't think he's going to sponsor for every single race. I think it is amazing and cool to see that there's consideration they may come back, and I really, like I said, hope they do make a return in 2024. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards if they actually do make a return in 2024, but maybe, just maybe, we are going to see the official return of Red Bull to NASCAR, and I really hope we can see that in 2024, because it'd be pretty cool to see them come back and sponsor him in 2024. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they do make an official return to NASCAR. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Legacy Motor Club. Now, on Friday evening, there was an article that came out from AutoWeeks.com. I can't remember who wrote that AutoWeek article. It might have been Deb Williams. I'm not entirely sure. But Adam Stern actually quote tweeted the article, and Legacy Motor Club says that Chevy was giving him Tier 3 treatment. treatment. And that was even before Jimmy Johnson came in and bought the organization. So they were getting that treatment all the way back in 2022. And Chevy was giving them very limited information intentionally. And that's one of the reasons why they left Chevy. Now, it's no secret that Chevrolet is extremely crowded currently at the moment. You have a lot of organizations at the top. You got 3 big Chevy organizations. You have Hendrick Motorsports, which has been the king for many, many years. You have Aspire Motorsports. You have Trackhouse Racing, which took over Chip Ganassi's place. And you have Richard Childress Racing in tier number 1. In tier number 2, you have Spire Motorsports. And then in tier number 3, you probably have Kaulig Racing, though they may end up being in tier number 2. Obviously, the Legacy Motor Club had a really bad year in 2023. Let's be honest, they had their worst year as an organization. Eric Jones finished 27th in the points. Granted, Eric Jones got, I think, a 60 or 70 point penalty and would have moved up to 22nd or 23rd in the standings, I believe. And then, of course, you did have another driver that basically, that being Noah Gragson in that car, which finished 32nd in owners' points, which Carson Osbar helped that car go from being like 34th or 33rd up to 32nd in the standings. The hope is with going to Toyota that they can improve a lot more. It doesn't surprise me. There was a lot of people saying this back earlier in the year that they were not getting as much support, and that probably is why drivers like Noah Gragson and Eric Jones ended up struggling in 2023. I predict for sure that at least one of the legacy cars is going to make the postseason in 2024. If I had to make a prediction, most likely Eric Jones. I think he's going to be the guy that surprised a lot of people in 2024, considering they're going to be getting tier 1 treatment, and they're going to be a big partner team in 2024. And I think John Hunter will do okay. I think there's going to be some struggles coming for John Hunter in the 2024 season, but in general, I think it will be a solid and great year for this team in 2024. We'll have to wait and see what happens, how this team ends up performing. It's interesting that they talk about us, but like I said, this team, it's not a surprise or shock to me that they got that tier 1. They're not more getting tier 1 treatment, but at least now they're going to be getting that tier 1 treatment that they absolutely deserve. And hopefully they can show that with Toyota, because Cowell's had like a 40-year relationship with Toyota, because obviously CART and IndyCar used to have a lot of partnership with Toyota. Hopefully we can see Legacy show that improvement in 2024. We'll have to wait and see what happens and see if they can do it in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, this headline got a lot of talking on social media over the weekend. So I believe tomorrow on YouTube, today on YouTube, there's going to be a full excerpt of Kyle Larson being on the Kenny Wallace show. And one of the things that a lot of people, including Jeff Gluck, were talking about was a comment made of a 5-minute excerpt that broke kind of like a preview clip that went on Kenny Wallace's YouTube channel. And basically, Kyle Larson says that he is not sure if he is going to be racing if he'll make it to 40 years old. He says, I don't see myself going to 40 and could retire from NASCAR early. This is not the first time that Kyle Larson has stated this publicly, that he could retire before the age of 40 years old. You go back to, I think, in 2018 or 2019 when he drove for Chip Ganassi Racing. He has stated publicly that he wants to run a full-time dirt tour before the end of his career, especially in his prime. And he doesn't really see himself lasting as long. Now, one thing people do have to remember is that if Kyle Larson was retired before the age of 40 years old, Kyle Larson's been in the Cup Series since 2014 on a full-time basis. Kyle Larson was 21 or 22 when he started. So if he goes to the end of 2030 or 31 for that matter, he will be 39 years old. That'll be near 2-decade career. Drivers like Jimmy Johnson ran 19 years. Other drivers like Matt Kenseth ran for about 18 or 19 years. 2020 was just a mess for Matt Kenseth. It was a really, really bad year. Dale Jr. ran for about that long. So most Cup drivers last from that 15 to 20-year stretch. Now, there's another quote that is mentioned in that saying that Kyle Larson said, if I'm enjoying it 8 years down the road, maybe I'll say NASCAR till I'm 50. So Kyle Larson could definitely for sure stay till he's 50 years old. But look, Kyle Larson is one of the best race car drivers in the world. Many people love Kyle Larson. He's an incredible talent. And if Kyle Larson does truly go until he's 40 years old, we still got 8 years of Kyle Larson. And then let's say Kyle Larson averages 4 to 5 wins a year. Gets 5 wins a year on average, which he's kind of averaging with Hendrick Motorsports right now. If he goes 8 years and gets 5 wins, he could still end up having more than 60 career NASCAR Cup Series victories, which would put him in the top 10 to 15 drivers of all time. Now, obviously, Kyle Larson may not go that long. Maybe if he retires 5 or 6 years. But Larson saying at least 7 to 8 years, he's going to be in the sport. I still think there's a chance and opportunity that Kyle Larson does, in fact, stay longer past 40. Maybe goes a little bit longer than that. But again, I think it's interesting. A lot of talking came out of this story, which I find very interesting. I know Kyle Larson's kind of talked about us in the past that he could retire early, but it's been not confirmed. Kind of interesting considering he did get to do a full-time dirt tour when he was suspended from the sport 3 or 4 years ago. I really thought Larson would have changed his tune, but it doesn't surprise or shock me. He's talked about us in the past. He wants to run a full dirt tour. I know he got to do it in 2020, but still, I know that Kyle Larson would love to be extremely successful in other forms of racing. He's, of course, going to run the Indy 500 this upcoming year, where I think he's got a really good chance to not only do really well, but win the Indy 500 and Coke 600 on the same day. I think Kyle Larson does have a chance to do that. And cool to see, though. It sucks to see Larson may retire early, but it's not a shocker and surprise to see that he's kind of interested in going to other forms of racing. Not a shocker and surprise, to be honest with you. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, RFK Racing has talked about in the past about looking to expand to other forms of racing. There's another article that came out from Deb Williams on January 3rd about them looking to expand to IMSA. But they first are planning to expand to a third full-time Cup Series team in the not-so-distant future. Obviously, in 2024, they are going to have a third team called Stage 60 that is going to have David Reagan in the Daytona 500. But there's a lot of rumors circulating that Cam Waters is going to run 3 NASCAR Cup Series races with the team, presumably all of them on road courses. And maybe we'll see them run more races than that in 2024. Obviously, we'll get to IMSA here in just a second, but RFK Racing has always kind of talked about expanding to the third full-time car. The thing that could hold up RFK Racing, though, to having a third full-time car is the charter system. Now, obviously, there's a lot of negotiations going on with the charter agreement, and the teams want to make the charter system permanent, but charters are extremely expensive. Charters right now are valued, I believe, at $40 million, especially after Lift Fast Motorsports sold their charter to Spire Motorsports for $40 million. That's how much charters are currently at the moment, at this particular second. Now, charter value also could skyrocket more as teams are looking to kind of get those charters permanent, and they could even skyrocket if they do end up becoming permanent. Now, obviously, I think RFK Racing would love to expand to a third full-time program for one of their drivers that could go to that organization like Rico Racing and bring someone in like Justin Haley, which I think brags obviously long-term. Would love to have Justin Haley full-time at RFK in the future. But, of course, Justin Haley does have a 2-year contract, I believe, with Rick Ware starting this year in the number 51 seat. But let's talk about them going to IMSA. Now, obviously, RFK has had some history in IMSA. When it was Roush Racing, when Jack Roush was owning the organization on a full basis, Jack Roush had Roush Racing in IMSA, and they won a lot of Rolex 24s. Drivers like Calvin Fish. I think Mark Martin's won some IMSA races. You think about other drivers like Wally Dallenbach Jr. I think Paul Newman drove for this team back in the 80s and the 90s. And they had a lot of success in IMSA. A big reason why he's doing that is because, of course, the next-gen car is kind of similar to a sports car. So that's why RFK is looking to go there. It would be pretty awesome and cool to see them move over to IMSA and race in that series. Maybe get some drivers, maybe have like a GT class in a Michelin Pilot Challenge. Have drivers like, of course, Haley Dean get an opportunity to learn. Chase Briscoe, maybe someone else that we don't know at this particular point, like Ben Rhodes goes over there. Jake Garcia would be a really good option as well to drive in that GT races if RFK was to go there. But another thing that's interesting is RFK right now is not planning to open up an Xfinity Series or Truck Series program anytime soon. There was a lot of chatter early in this year, or at the end of last year, that RFK Racing was maybe thinking about returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. While there's been chatter about that, it sounds like that's not going to be happening anytime soon, which is a pretty big disappointment because we all thought when that 60 number was kind of being talked about that they were going to bring that car back in the number 60 car, which obviously the last time the car ran Xfinity was in 2018, to very little to no success. They had a lot of struggles. They only had like 2 or 3 top 10s altogether that year. They had like 30 incidents that season with Ty Majeski, Austin and Chase Briscoe behind the wheel, and they have not been back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series since. I would love to see them return to Xfinity or trucks, but right now it sounds like that is not going to be the case or the possibility at this particular moment. I really hope they change their mind in regards to that, and maybe they go ahead and run the Xfinity trucks in the future, but it would also be very cool to see him go to IMSA. I think they would be pretty successful, especially got some other drivers, and what's not stopping them from getting drivers from IMSA like Mike Rockefeller coming in, like Joey Hand, who have of course driven the next-gen car, like getting some other drivers from Ford, maybe they're bringing them in, like Cam Waters to go into their IMSA program. That would be a very interesting move. I think it's very interesting to see what happens and how things kind of play out if RFK expands at IMSA. I would say the earliest they could do it is 2025. They're not going to do it for 2024. We're so close to start 2024, and the Rolex 24 is like 3 weeks away from now, so they're not going to enter this year. But it'd still be really awesome and cool to see them have a chance and opportunity to form an IMSA program and go there. We'll see what happens, though, if it ever ends up happening, but maybe RFK will go to IMSA in the near future. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about IROC. As it was shockingly announced early this morning that IROC is officially coming back. You heard me right. It was reported by Adam Stern and many reporters that Ray Evernham and Rob Kauffman have bought the brand, and they hope to have a race in 2024 with older cars. This is a shocking announcement, but honestly an extremely exciting announcement. For those who do not know what IROC is, IROC was an international race of champions that raced from 1974 or 1973 till 2006 when they closed at the end of 2006. Tony Stewart won the most recent championship and had a lot of legendary drivers from all forms of racing, from NASCAR to IMSA to basically World of Outlaws. You had F1 drivers, and IndyCar drivers competing, and even drag racing drivers, I believe, like John Force, competed in this series as well. They only ran 4 races every single year, so there were very few races that ran. And what Ray Evernham's kind of been teasing this for a very long time. Now, a lot of people are really, really confused. A lot of people thought that Ray Evernham was still part of the SRX. That's not true. Ray Evernham confirmed this last year, I think in August, that he was no longer part of the SRX, and I think he left at the end of the first year. Apparently he did not like the direction. Some people are saying that he didn't like the direction the SRX was going, and that's why he left. But having a legendary series like IROC come back is phenomenal and absolutely incredible. Now, like I've mentioned, it sounds like they're only likely going to run one race in 2024 and maybe have a couple races in 2025. Maybe it's like a demonstration race and may run it in winter. I'm not entirely sure. Their details were extremely vague. But this could be the opportunity to bring more drivers from different forms of racing, not just from NASCAR, but maybe bring other drivers from forms like IndyCar. Maybe bring drivers from the IMSA series. Maybe even F1 drivers like a Max Verstappen. Bring drivers like Kyle Busch. And maybe we can have a very similar situation of what's going on with High Limit in the World of Outlaws, where drivers can choose if they want to go to the SRX or if they want to go to the International Race of Champions. I think it's really good for racing. The more racing series we can have, the better. And hopefully, and it sounds like, because Ray was thinking about bringing newer cars in, but some of those cars he had in his garage, he was talking about with Stapleton 42 earlier this or last year, was talking about that. I just think it's so incredible to see a legendary series like the International Race of Champions is going to be coming back in 2024. Again, they're going to try to race this year. It sounds like I said, a one-off, but I really love the fact that they're bringing this back. Hey, Rob Kauffman actually did something good for once, because Rob Kauffman hasn't done a lot of great things in the sport in the last 15, 20 years, so I'm really glad to see that he's bringing IROC back. It's unclear what other investors are in play. Obviously, I think it's going to be a branding and entertainment branding about other things as well as what they're doing with this series. There's still a lot of unknowns in regards to that, but still, I just find it phenomenal and absolutely incredible that they're just bringing this series back, man. When I woke up this morning and I saw this news, I was absolutely shocked and was really, really surprised that they were bringing this back, because like I said, the last time IROC raced, I wasn't even a fan of motorsports, because I became a fan of motorsports in the year 2007. So 1 year after I became a fan of NASCAR, IROC ended, and it was a really big shame, but I think they ran out of money. And if I'm not mistaken, if this is true, you can if I'm not right on this, you can correct me on this, but I believe manufacturing support kind of went away at the end of 2002 or 2003, which is one of the reasons why basically this series unfortunately lost a lot of money. But another big thing about Ray Evernham, this is actually where he got his start in motorsports. He worked as a mechanic in the SRX, and that's how he got the opportunity. So Ray Evernham, who actually created the SRX and of course IROC, I just think it's phenomenal to see that they're bringing this back. And I wonder what drivers we could get. Maybe we can get Carl Edwards out of retirement. Maybe if Kurt Busch is able to medically cleared, maybe we get him to run in this series. Maybe Haley Deegan runs in this, even though I know she was in the SRX last year. Maybe we see her, because they haven't confirmed what drivers are going to be in the SRX this year. I know they confirmed 5 to 6 racetracks, but there still is one racetrack that has to be announced. But more competition for racing, the better. And hey, I am for having more racing series, because more racing series you have, the more you can talk about. So again, there's probably going to be more details revealed as time goes on. But I am really excited to see that the IROC is coming back. I'm excited about it, and I'm glad to see the International Race of Champions is officially making a return in 2024. Really exciting, awesome stuff, and I think this is huge for motorsports and a massive win for motorsports overall, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto once again. I've talked about Matt DiBenedetto quite a bit on the channel over the course of the last few weeks, so let's recap everything that's been going on with Matt DiBenedetto. On December 27th, Matt DiBenedetto put out a tweet showing the signed pen emoji, indicating that he was going to be going somewhere in 2024. Then Private Porno went on Twitter the next day on December 28th and indicated that Matt DiBenedetto may be headed to AM Racing in 2024. But then after New Year's, Bob Pockers commented saying that he doubted that the AM Racing rumor was actually true, and he indicated that Matt DiBenedetto could head to the 15 car or the 16 car in 2024. And there's begun to be a lot of chatter in the last day or two that Matt DiBenedetto may be headed to Kaulig Racing in 2024. There was a motorsports.com article that came out that Nick DeGroot wrote and mentions Matt DiBenedetto by name as someone who has been linked to Kaulig Racing for 2024 in the Cup Series. He also does mention that Josh Williams and Ty Dillon are also linked to that 16 car, despite the fact that I didn't think Ty Dillon was even going to be eligible for that, considering the fact he's going to be full-time with Rackley in the Truck Series. It sounds like he's still looking to try and maybe run with Kaulig this upcoming season in 2024. Look, Matt DiBenedetto Kaulig Racing is definitely very interesting. Again, I want to reiterate this. This is just a rumor, so this is not officially confirmed, and this has not been officially announced. But if Matt DiBenedetto does come back to the Cup Series, I'm really, really happy about this. Look, Matt DiBenedetto, I think, is a talented driver. Has he made a lot of mistakes? Yes, absolutely. Matt DiBenedetto made a lot of mistakes off the racetrack. I don't think on the racetrack he's made a lot of mistakes, but he's made mistakes off the racetrack. You know, he did in 2021. Kind of threw the Wood brothers under the bus, and Roger Penske called him out. And then he basically left early from Rackley, though I think he should have been able to finish the season if Rackley were racing in 2023, considering he got the team to the playoffs and nearly knocked Ben Rhodes out of the round of 8. And had he knocked Ben Rhodes out of the round of 8, we wouldn't have seen Ben Rhodes win the championship this year. And instead, most likely, Grant Enfinger is your 2023 Truck Series champion. Instead, Ben Rhodes won it because Matt DiBenedetto basically missed driver intros at Milwaukee. Matt DiBenedetto, in my opinion, he's not in a Kyle Larson level or a Kyle Busch level. I put him on the same level as a driver like Bubba Wallace, so I do think right now Bubba Wallace is a better driver than Matt DiBenedetto. But it's not like Matt DiBenedetto is a bad driver. Look, he got the Wood brothers to the playoffs in 2020. He got that team capable. He went against Denny Hamlin at frickin' Bristol in 2019. Denny Hamlin at the time, by the way, had one of his best seasons in his NASCAR Cup Series career. And Matt DiBenedetto in a Levine family racing car, which had loose ties to JGR, nearly won a couple races that year, led the most laps in the Daytona 500 that year. I guess people forget that. And he had an outside chance to make the playoffs here, and I think he finished in the top 20 in the standings. Next, there goes the Wood brothers and contends for victories. No disrespect to Harrison Burton. I like Harrison Burton a lot. But what has Harrison Burton done since Matt DiBenedetto left? He's had 4 career top 10s. Matt DiBenedetto, I think, has had more runner-up finishes in his career than Harrison Burton has had top 10s. Only 4 top 10s in his career and 1 or 2 top 5s. Not very impressive in the first years, so Harrison Burton is a much younger driver, so I'll cut him a little bit of slack. He got Rackley to the playoffs, got the first win for that team, and while I think Ty Dillon will do okay, I don't know if Ty Dillon's going to do as good as Matt DiBenedetto did, but I still think Ty Dillon is going to make the postseason. Again, I think Matt DiBenedetto does deserve a chance and opportunity to be in a solid seat, and if he does go to Kaulig, I think it's a solid ride for him, and I think he'll do overall a pretty good and solid job with the team. He's not going to go out there and contend for wins on a week-by-week basis. Again, it's unclear how many races. Some have been theorizing maybe 20 races is what the number, but it's still a rumor currently at the moment. There were rumors a few months ago that he was mentioned as a driver, but those rumors had been kind of unfounded. Again, outside of that, I know some people mentioned AM Racing. Those rumors, I think, are now untrue at this point. Maybe Brett Moffitt's going back to that 25 car is still kind of unknown. Frankie's name has been mentioned for multiple seats this year, because Frankie's kind of indicated he does have an announcement for 2024, but there still has been nothing from Frankie at this point, so we don't really know what's going on there. Again, outside of that, there's been rumors of Tory maybe shutting down their truck program, though that has not been confirmed at this point. There's still a lot of rumblings and rumors going on, especially in the silly season. But going back to Matt DiBenedetto, if he gets the opportunity, I'll be very happy for him. At least he'll be in the sport. And if he does go there, I hope he can make the best of it. If he does go to Kaulig part-time, I think gets like 4 or 5 top 10s and maybe gets a couple top 5s. I think he'll do a solid job. I still think Allmendinger in the select races he runs, he'll probably do good, but we'll see what happens. But it sounds like Matt DiBenedetto has a chance, a possibility to go to Kaulig Racing in 2024, but we'll see if he does end up going there. There could be an announcement in the coming weeks as we're getting really close to Daytona, and we're only like 4 weeks from the Clash, actually 26 days from the Clash when the video's out at this point. So we'll see what happens. And we'll see where Matt DiBenedetto is actually going in 2024. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how things fly. Like I said, there's still a lot of unknowns. And again, it's just a rumor currently at the moment. But Matt DiBenedetto could, in fact, be headed to Kaulig Racing in 2024. We'll see what happens if he does truly go there this upcoming season. So, that is today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. One thing, guys, for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support on Patreon as well. Links description more of that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Matt DiBenedetto is actually going to Kaulig or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the International Race of Champions returning? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If there's any news that comes out early this morning, there should be a video on the channel talking about that. Tomorrow on the channel, there's going to be a 2025 NASCAR silly season predictions, as obviously tomorrow is going to be my 24th birthday. Thursday, there could be a NASCAR news video dropping. Friday, there's going to be something special dropping in the channel for sure. I got a lot of great content. There's going to be a bowl predictions for 2024 dropping at some point later this week, so make sure to check that out. And there's also going to be driver lineup videos for the Xfinity Series and Truck Series dropping here very, very soon as we're getting closer to the start of the season. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.